The war was over, but the land was still burning. Human soldiers were leaving the alien world, but one man stayed behind. His name was Daniel, a soldier who had lost everything in the war. He was tired, broken, and ready to go home, but fate had other plans for him. One night, a secret message came to him. The alien queen wanted to see him. It was strange because the queen hated humans and humans hated her. Still, Daniel went to the palace, where the walls still smelled of smoke and blood. The throne room was empty, except for the queen. She was tall, her silver skin glowing in the firelight. Her eyes were sharp like blades, but there was sadness inside them. She stood with her daughter beside her, a young princess with bright green eyes. Daniel bowed, not knowing why he was called. The queen spoke softly, "You fought with honor, human." Her words surprised him, because no alien ruler had ever praised a human before. She stepped closer, her voice heavy with fear. "My enemies are everywhere, even in my court." Daniel listened carefully, his heart beating fast. The queen placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "This is my daughter, my heir," the queen said, "and I cannot trust anyone to keep her safe, not even my own guards." Daniel felt confused, his chest tight with shock. The princess looked at him with anger. She did not like the idea of a human protector. Her voice was cold. "Mother, he is not one of us. He is an enemy." But the queen only whispered back, "Sometimes an enemy can be the only shield we have." Then the queen did something no one expected. She pushed her daughter forward, closer to Daniel. Her voice broke like a whisper of wind. "Protect her with your life." Her eyes begged him to understand the weight of her words. Daniel stood frozen, unsure if he could accept such a task. He was only a soldier, not a guardian of a princess. But something in the queen's eyes, something desperate, made him nod slowly. "I will protect her," Daniel said, his voice steady even as doubt burned in him. The princess pulled away, her face full of pride. "I don't need him," she said, but her mother shook her head. "You need him more than you know," the queen whispered. Her hand trembled as if she already feared what would come next. At that moment, the sound of metal echoed through the hall. Shadows moved along the walls, and assassins rushed forward with blades. The queen shouted, "Go now," and raised her staff. Daniel grabbed the princess's arm and pulled her to the side door. The princess tried to resist, but the assassins were already near. Daniel pushed her behind him and drew his weapon. He fought with everything he had, his training guiding his every move. Steel clashed, sparks flew, and bodies fell in the silence of the great hall. The princess watched, her eyes wide. She had never seen a human fight for her. Daniel's arms bled, his chest burned, but he never stepped back. When the last assassin fell, the queen's voice echoed again. "Run, take her away." Daniel turned to the princess, his breath heavy. Her face was pale, and for the first time, she did not argue. Together, they ran through secret tunnels hidden under the palace. Behind them, the queen stayed, fighting her own battle, buying them time. The tunnels were dark, the walls wet with dripping water. The princess spoke, her voice shaking. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel looked at her, his face hard. "Because your mother asked me." The princess frowned, still full of doubt. "You could leave me, you don't owe me anything." Daniel kept walking, his boots echoing against the stone floor. He did not answer right away, his mind full of memories of his lost squad. Finally, he spoke, "I couldn't save my brothers in the war, but maybe I can save you." The princess looked at him in silence, her pride fighting her fear. Above them, explosions rocked the ground. The palace was under attack, and the queen's fate was unknown. But Daniel and the princess kept moving forward, step by step. In that moment, both of them knew there was no turning back. The queen's gift had become Daniel's burden. The life of a princess now rested in the hands of a human soldier. And somewhere in the shadows, enemies were already waiting for them. The story of trust, betrayal, and forbidden love had only just begun. The tunnels under the alien palace stretched like veins in the earth. Cold air drifted through the stones, carrying the smell of dust and damp. Daniel kept his weapon ready, his hand gripping the princess's arm to guide her. She pulled against him, her green eyes full of fire, but her steps still followed his. "I don't need your help," she hissed, her voice sharp like broken glass. Daniel stopped and turned, his tired eyes staring into hers. "You may not want it, princess, but you need it," he answered, his voice firm. Her lips pressed into a thin line, pride burning brighter than fear. Her name was Liara, heir to the alien throne, born to rule with power. Yet here she was, running through shadows with a human soldier. Every step felt like an insult to her bloodline, but the memory of assassins haunted her mind. Daniel noticed the way her hands shook, though she tried to hide it. As they reached a chamber with old carved walls, Liara pulled free. She stepped back, her cloak brushing the stone floor, her voice rising. "You think saving me once means I will trust you? You are a human. Your people destroyed our cities, burned our fields, slaughtered our kind." Her words cut deep, but Daniel did not flinch. He spoke quietly, his voice like a heavy stone. "My people destroyed much, but I never wanted that war." Liara laughed bitterly, though her voice cracked. "Do all humans pretend to be noble when blood still stains their hands?" Before Daniel could answer, the walls shook with a distant roar. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the ground trembled under their feet. Enemies were still searching, closing in, their shadows crawling toward the tunnels. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but unyielding. "Princess, you can hate me, but if you don't follow me, you will die." Liara's chest rose and fell quickly, anger warring with fear. Finally, she turned her face away and whispered, "Lead then, human." Daniel nodded and began moving again, the silence between them sharp as a blade. Hours passed as they pushed deeper into the hidden passages. The tunnels opened into a cavern filled with glowing crystal veins. The light painted Liara's silver hair with shades of blue and violet. For a moment Daniel stared, reminded that she was not just a burden, but something fragile and rare. Liara caught his gaze and frowned. "Don't look at me like I am some treasure," she muttered, her pride still unbroken. Daniel looked away, his hand tightening on his weapon. "I don't see treasure," he said softly. "I see responsibility." Before Liara could reply, a sound echoed through the cavern. A whisper of steel, a flicker of movement among the crystals. Assassins stepped out of the shadows, their eyes glowing under alien masks. Liara gasped, her hand reaching for the dagger at her waist. Daniel moved faster, pushing her behind him. "Stay low," he ordered, and charged forward, his blade clashing against the first attacker. Sparks burst as metal struck metal, the cavern ringing like a bell. Liara crouched, but her pride forced her to join the fight. She leapt forward, her dagger flashing under the crystal light. Though she was not trained like Daniel, her strikes carried fury. An assassin lunged at her, but Daniel blocked the blow, his arm burning from the impact. "Behind me!" he shouted, but she ignored him. The battle raged, shadows and light dancing across the cavern. At last, Daniel drove his blade through the last assassin, his chest heaving with exhaustion. Liara stood with her dagger raised, her breaths fast and uneven. Her eyes locked on him, full of conflict she could not hide. "You saved me again," she whispered, her voice lower than before. Daniel wiped blood from his blade and answered, "I don't want your thanks, princess. I only want to keep my promise." Liara lowered her weapon slowly, her pride breaking like thin glass. For the first time, her eyes softened, though she quickly looked away. She did not speak of gratitude, but something in her silence changed. As they left the cavern, the glow fading behind them, the air grew colder. Daniel knew she would still fight him with words, but inside her, a seed of doubt had taken root. Maybe the human was not her enemy. Maybe, just maybe, he was the only one keeping her alive. The tunnels ended at last, opening into a wild forest under alien skies. 2 moons hung above, casting silver and violet light through the trees. The leaves glowed faintly, alive with strange energy, while the ground pulsed as if breathing. Daniel stepped forward first, scanning the shadows, his weapon ready. Liara followed, her eyes sharp though her steps were heavy. The night air was thick with sounds, distant howls, beating wings, whispers of creatures unseen. She pulled her cloak tighter, though she would never admit she was cold. Daniel glanced at her, noticing her trembling fingers, but he said nothing. Hours passed as they walked deeper into the alien woods. The path twisted, roots rising like serpents, and mist crawled along the ground. Daniel moved carefully, every sense alert. Liara, however, walked with her chin high, her pride refusing to show weakness. At one point, her foot slipped on wet stone. Daniel caught her arm quickly, steadying her before she could fall. She pulled away at once, her cheeks burning with anger. "I don't need your help," she snapped, though her voice shook. Daniel did not argue. He simply kept walking. His silence frustrated her more than his words ever could. She wanted him to fight back, to prove her right, but he remained calm. In that calm, she saw a strength she did not expect. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the trees. A growl, deep and ancient, rolling like thunder. Daniel raised his weapon, his eyes searching the mist. From the shadows, massive beasts emerged, their bodies armored with bone, their eyes glowing red. Liara gasped, pulling her dagger, though her hands trembled. Daniel stepped in front of her, his stance wide, his blade gleaming under moonlight. The beasts charged, shaking the ground with every step. Daniel struck the first, his blade cutting deep, but more surrounded them. Liara fought too, her dagger slashing, her cloak whipping through the air. She was not skilled, but she was fierce, her spirit unbroken. One beast lunged at her, its jaw snapping open. Daniel shoved her aside, taking the strike on his shoulder, blood spilling. Pain burned through him, but he kept fighting. Every movement was heavy, but he refused to fall. Liara screamed his name, her pride forgotten, her fear clear at last. Together, they fought side by side, human strength and alien fire. At last, the beasts fell silent, their bodies fading back into the mist as if made of shadow. Daniel dropped to one knee, blood dripping from his wound. Liara rushed to him, kneeling beside him, her eyes wide. "You saved me again," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel smiled faintly, though his face was pale. "It seems to be becoming a habit," he muttered, his breath uneven. Liara pressed her hands against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her pride was gone now, replaced by fear and something softer. "You could have let me die," she said quietly. Daniel's eyes met hers, steady even in pain. "I gave her mother my word, and I don't break promises," he replied. Her throat tightened, her heart torn between loyalty to her people and the human before her. When the danger passed, they built a small fire in the hollow of a giant root. Daniel rested, his wound wrapped in cloth, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Liara sat near him, watching the flames, her thoughts restless. She had always believed humans were nothing but destroyers, yet this one fought like a shield. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of fire and the whispers of the forest. At last Liara spoke, her voice low. "You are not what I expected, Daniel," she admitted, though she quickly looked away. Daniel chuckled softly. "And you are not as impossible as I thought, princess." For the first time, she did not correct him. Her eyes lingered on his face, the firelight dancing in his tired eyes. A strange warmth spread in her chest, confusing and frightening. She told herself it was only gratitude, but deep down, she felt it was something more. Outside the firelight, unseen eyes watched them. Rebel warriors moved silently through the woods, following their trail. Daniel and Liara did not know yet, but their journey was only growing more dangerous. And in the heart of the alien forest, trust between them began to bloom, fragile but real. The forest stretched on for endless miles, its glowing leaves whispering in the cold wind. Daniel moved slowly, his shoulder still aching from the bee's strike, but he never let his guard down. Liara walked beside him, her eyes sharper now, no longer filled only with pride, but with questions she kept hidden. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts. At last, they reached a ridge where the land opened into a valley. Below lay the ruins of an old temple, its stone walls cracked but still standing. Symbols carved into the pillars glowed faintly, marks of Liara's ancestors. Daniel guided her inside, choosing it as shelter, while Liara traced her fingers over the runes. "This place was built by my bloodline," she whispered, her voice soft with memory. Daniel watched her carefully, seeing the weight of history on her shoulders. She turned to him suddenly, her eyes burning with curiosity. "Why did you truly accept my mother's request? A soldier like you want to go home, not guard an alien princess." Daniel hesitated, his jaw tight. "I lost everything in the war," he admitted, his voice low. "My squad, my friends, my brothers, all gone." He looked away, the firelight of the temple casting shadows across his scarred face. Liara listened quietly, the bitterness in her heart softening. "You fight because you carry their ghosts," she said, more statement than question. Daniel nodded slowly. "If I could not save them, then maybe I can save you." The words hung heavy in the air, more than a duty, more than a promise. Liara's chest tightened, though she tried not to show it. No one had ever spoken to her without expecting something in return. This human fought not for power, not for reward, but because he believed it was right. And that truth unsettled her more than any assassin's blade. But secrets did not only belong to Daniel. That night, as the fire burned low, Liara revealed her own. "The assassins are not only rebels," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They're for my family. My own blood seeks the throne." Daniel's eyes narrowed, the weight of her words sinking deep. "Your family?" he asked, his voice sharp. Liara nodded, her face pale in the glow of the temple runes. "My uncle believes I am too weak to rule. He thinks the crown should be his." Daniel clenched his fists, his anger quiet but strong. "Then your mother was right not to trust her court," he said. Liara's lips trembled, though she lifted her chin high. "She gave you to me because she knew betrayal would come from within." The truth wrapped around Daniel like chains. He was no longer just protecting a princess from faceless rebels. He was guarding her from her own blood, from enemies who wore her family's crest. It was a burden heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. That night, Liara sat close to the fire, her eyes watching Daniel as he cleaned his blade. Her heart whispered questions she did not dare ask. Could she trust him more than her kin? Could an enemy become her only shield? Daniel, unaware of her thoughts, kept his focus on the steel, though deep inside he wondered the same. The next morning, they left the temple, the sun rising over the alien valley. Liara walked closer to him than before, not out of weakness, but out of choice. Her pride still lived, but something else had taken root, a fragile bond. Daniel noticed, but said nothing, only tightened his grip on his weapon. Unseen to them, a messenger rode through the woods, carrying news to Liara's uncle. The princess was alive, and she was not alone. She was with a human soldier. The betrayal grew darker, the danger closer, and the game of power sharper than ever. Daniel and Liara did not know yet, but the secrets they carried would soon ignite a storm. The days grew longer as Daniel and Liara moved deeper into the alien wilds. The forest gave way to rocky hills, and the air carried the scent of ash from distant fires. Every night, Daniel kept watch while Liara rested, though he hardly slept himself. Her uncle's betrayal weighed heavy on both of them, but neither spoke of it often. At last, they reached a hidden outpost carved into the cliffs. Old allies of the queen once lived here, warriors loyal to her bloodline. Liara's eyes brightened with hope when she saw the carved banners still hanging at the entrance. Here we will be safe, she whispered, her voice lighter than it had been in days. Daniel's instincts, however, remained sharp. He studied the guards at the gate, their eyes cold, their hands too eager on their weapons. Something in their stance felt wrong, but Liara stepped forward without hesitation. "They are my mother's sworn men," she said, though her words carried a hint of doubt. Inside, the outpost seemed calm, torches burning along the stone halls. The leader, a tall warrior named Vaynar, greeted Liara with a bow. "Princess, we feared you were lost," he said, his voice smooth, his smile practiced. Liara smiled faintly, relief washing over her, though Daniel's hand never left his blade. That night, food and drink were brought, and Liara sat among the warriors. For the first time since leaving the palace, she felt almost at peace. Daniel sat near the shadows, his eyes scanning every corner. The laughter around the fire sounded too sharp, too rehearsed, and his chest grew heavy with warning. Then it happened, a sudden strike, fast as lightning. The warriors drew their blades at once, surrounding Daniel. Liara gasped, rising to her feet, her dagger in hand. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the hall. Vaynar stepped forward, his smile cruel. "Forgive me, princess, but your uncle made us an offer too great to refuse," he said. "You may live, but the human dies tonight." Daniel raised his blade, though he was outnumbered 10-1. His eyes locked with Liara's, steady even in betrayal. "Stay behind me," he said firmly, though blood already dripped from a wound across his arm. Liara's heart pounded, her trust shattered like glass. The warriors struck, steel flashing. Daniel fought like a storm, every movement fueled by will alone. 2 fell, then 3, but blades cut across his chest, his side, his strength fading. Still, he stood, refusing to fall. Liara screamed, her voice raw, "Stop! He is under my protection." But her words meant nothing. The warriors only sneered. Vaynar stepped closer, his blade pressed against Daniel's throat. "Your protector bleeds, princess. Surrender and live, or watch him die." Liara's hand shook, her dagger trembling in her grip. Her mind raced, torn between crown and honor, duty and heart. For years she had been told to value her bloodline above all else. But here was a human who had saved her again and again, who fought even when his life meant nothing to her people. Daniel's voice cut through the silence, rough but strong. "Do not surrender, princess," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "Your mother trusted me to protect you, and I will do so until my last breath." Liara's chest ached, her pride cracking, her fear consuming her. Vaynar laughed coldly, pressing the blade harder. "You see? Even now he dies for nothing," he mocked. Liara stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fire. "No," she said, her voice steady, "he dies for me." Before Vaynar could react, Liara drove her dagger into his side. The hall erupted in chaos, warriors shouting, blades clashing. Daniel, though bleeding, seized the moment, striking down the man who held him. The fight became a storm of fire and steel. But Daniel's strength was nearly gone. 2 warriors struck him from behind, driving him to his knees. Liara screamed his name, her dagger flashing, but she was pulled away, her hands bound, her cries echoing through the stone halls. Daniel was dragged across the floor, his blood staining the stone. Liara fought to break free, her heart breaking as she saw him fall. Vaynar, clutching his wound but still alive, smiled darkly. "The human will be taken to your uncle," he said, "and you, princess, will learn who truly holds power." As Daniel was carried away into the night, his eyes met Liara's one last time. No words were spoken, but in his gaze she saw everything: promise, sacrifice, and unbroken strength. Her chest burned with fury, with fear, and with a vow she whispered only to herself. "I will not let you die, Daniel." The safe haven had turned into a cage. The betrayal was complete. And for the first time, Liara stood alone, her destiny and her heart bound to the fate of a human. The fortress of Liara's uncle rose like a black crown against the night sky. Its towers pierced the clouds, and its walls burned with the glow of torches. Inside, Daniel was thrown into chains, his body battered, his blood staining the stone floor. Yet even in pain, his eyes burned with fire unbroken. The guards mocked him, calling him nothing but a human dog. Daniel ignored them, his mind fixed only on Liara. He remembered her last look, her vow hidden in her eyes, and it kept him alive. Hours turned into days, but Daniel never begged, never broke. Meanwhile, Liara was held in her uncle's chamber. He wore a crown that was not yet his, but his greed shone brighter than any jewel. "Your mother is weak," he told her, his voice smooth with poison. "And you, niece, will kneel, or you will vanish as if you never lived." Liara's heart burned with rage. She thought of Daniel, chained and bleeding because of her. Her uncle expected fear, but she gave him defiance. "You will never wear the crown, not while I live," she said, her voice sharp as steel. Her uncle laughed, unfazed. "Then let us see how much your human protector bleeds before you surrender." He ordered Daniel dragged into the hall, chains clattering, his body weak but his spirit fierce. Liara's chest ached as she saw him, but Daniel still stood tall. The guards shoved him to his knees. Her uncle stepped forward, blade in hand. "One word, princess," he said, "swear loyalty to me, and this human lives refuse, and he dies here." The hall fell silent, every guard waiting, every torch burning with cruel light. Liara's hands shook, her mind racing. She could not lose him, yet surrender meant her world would fall into her uncle's hands. Daniel met her eyes, his voice rough but steady. "Do not bow to him, Liara. I would rather die than see you chained." Her heart broke, her pride and fear colliding. For the first time, Liara realized the truth. Daniel was no longer just her protector. He was her strength, her anchor, the one who had given her more than her own blood ever had. Tears burned her eyes, but she lifted her chin. "No," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber. Her uncle's face twisted with rage, his blade rising high. But in that moment, Daniel struck. He had hidden a shard of broken chain in his hand, and with one swift move, he cut his bonds. Chaos erupted. Daniel lunged forward, seizing the guard's weapon, his body weak but his will unshaken. Liara grabbed a fallen blade, her movements sharp with fury. Together, they fought as the hall turned into a storm of steel. Guards fell one by one, but more poured in. Daniel's wounds reopened, blood soaking his shirt, but he refused to stop. Liara stood at his side, her voice fierce. "You are not alone, Daniel." Her dagger struck true, her defiance burning brighter than the torches. At last, Daniel faced her uncle. The man sneered, his strength great, his skill sharp. Their blades clashed, sparks flying, the sound of steel shaking the hall. Daniel staggered but refused to fall, his promise to the queen guiding his hand. Liara shouted, throwing her dagger to him at the last moment. Daniel caught it, and with one final strike, he drove the blade into her uncle's chest. The man's eyes widened, his crown falling, his body collapsing onto the stone floor. Silence followed, broken only by the sound of Daniel's ragged breaths. Liara rushed to him, catching him as his legs gave way. "You fool," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You were ready to die for me again." Daniel gave a faint smile, his hand brushing hers. "I told you, princess, I don't break promises." The remaining guards dropped their weapons, their loyalty broken with their master's fall. Liara stood tall, her eyes blazing with the fire of a queen. But she did not stand alone, for Daniel was at her side, even in blood and pain. Together, they had turned betrayal into victory. Yet the night was not over. The kingdom outside still burned with rebellion. And though the uncle had fallen, greater battles awaited. The final test of trust, love, and destiny was still to come. The dawn broke over the alien citadel, its towers glowing with the first light of day. The battle was over, but the ground was still stained with blood. Liara stood tall at the center of the hall, her uncle's crown lying shattered at her feet. Daniel leaned against a pillar nearby, wounded and weary, but still alive. The surviving guards knelt one by one, their voices trembling. "We pledge to the true heir," they said, bowing before Liara. For the first time, she felt the weight of her destiny not as a burden, but as a truth she could no longer deny. Her mother's trust, her people's hope, and Daniel's sacrifice had brought her to this moment. Liara turned to Daniel, her heart pulling harder than her crown. He was pale, his chest bandaged, yet his eyes still burned with quiet fire. "You should be resting," she whispered, her voice softer than the wind. Daniel gave a faint smile. "And missed the part where you become queen? Not a chance." She almost laughed, but her throat was too tight. The war had taken everything from her: family, peace, and innocence. But it had also given her something she had never expected. A protector who had become her strength, and perhaps something more. That night, the fires of celebration lit the citadel. Banners of the Queen's line waved in the wind. The people chanted Liara's name, their voices rising like thunder across the valley. Daniel stood at her side, though he tried to remain in the shadows. Liara saw it, the way he tried to disappear as if he did not belong. She stepped closer, her crown gleaming under the stars. "You saved me again and again," she said, her voice carrying both pride and gratitude. "You gave me your strength when no one else would. Why do you still stand apart?" Daniel looked at her, his face calm, though his eyes revealed a storm. "Because I am human," he said. "I was your enemy once, and perhaps to your people I will always be." Liara shook her head, her silver hair flowing like firelight. "No, Daniel, you are not my enemy. You are my promise." Her words cut deeper than any blade. Daniel's chest tightened, his breath caught. He had been many things in his life: a soldier, a survivor, a broken man. But never had he been someone's promise, someone's chosen shield. The crowd faded in his mind. The chants grew distant. All he saw was her, standing proud, fierce, and yet looking at him with a softness that could break worlds. She stepped closer, her voice low so only he could hear. "My mother said, protect her with your life, but I say, protect me with your heart." Daniel's hand trembled, but he reached for hers. Her fingers wrapped around his, strong yet gentle. In that moment, it was no longer about duty, no longer about war. It was about a bond forged in fire, sharper than steel, stronger than blood. The moons rose above the citadel, silver light pouring over the new queen and her protector. Together they stood, two souls once divided by war, now bound by trust and something deeper. Liara raised her voice to her people, declaring a future of strength and unity. And at her side, Daniel stood, not as a soldier, not as an enemy, but as her chosen guardian. The story of betrayal, of blood, and of sacrifice ended here. But the story of love, trust, and destiny had only just begun. For in the heart of the alien queen's daughter, and in the vow of a human soldier, a new world was born, bound by the promise they shared forever.